He hadn't smiled in 3 years. Not since his father's funeral. Not at his younger sister Yuna's college graduation. Not when the mayor of New York personally handed him a plaque for the Park Family Foundation's $20 million hospital wing. Not when his Aunt Mina flew in from Seoul with the news that she had become a grandmother. His mother had started calling him my beautiful statue, half joking, half not. His fiancée, Choi Ariam, had been sitting beside him at his own engagement dinner for 4 hours, and he hadn't smiled at her once. Then Layla Ellis walked into the dining room to clean up a spilled glass of red wine, and Park Ji-hoon smiled like a man who had just remembered what oxygen felt like. If you've ever wondered what it looks like when a man's entire life gets rewritten in the space of one heartbeat, stay right here. Because this story is going to break you open in the best possible way. Ji-hoon was 32 years old, sole heir to Park Holdings, an East Coast commercial real estate empire that had been in his family for 3 generations, and that had, in the last decade, quietly expanded into interests his mother preferred not to discuss with civilians. 6'1", dark suit, dark eyes, famous in Manhattan and Long Island social circles for being the most beautiful bored man in any room he walked into. Since his father's death, he had run the business flawlessly, obeyed every family expectation, and become, by his own quiet admission to no one, a ghost inside his own life. The engagement dinner was his mother's design. 60 guests at the Park Estate in Oyster Bay. Both families. A string quartet on the terrace. A Michelin star catering team flown up from Madison Avenue. Ariam, daughter of the Choi shipping family in Seoul, was 29, spoke 5 languages, held a master's from the London School of Economics, and possessed the specific kind of tired grace that came from being raised, like him, to marry someone chosen for her by people who called it love and meant it as merger. He didn't dislike her. He simply couldn't find her. They sat side by side at the head of the long table under the crystal chandelier his grandfather had bought in Prague in 1978. Ariam spoke to his mother, to his Aunt Mina, to the Deputy Consul General of the Republic of Korea, to the wife of a senator who had come up from Washington for the occasion. She laughed at the correct moments. She held her wine glass at exactly the correct height. And Ji-hoon sat beside her and heard none of it, because he was very good at being a ghost. Then a young server behind him, a nervous kid named Marcus, hired for the night, knocked a full glass of Merlot onto the white cloth at the corner of the table and onto the pale silk cocktail dress of the wife of the consul general. Marcus went white. Ariam froze. Sun-hee Park's smile did not move, but something behind her eyes went very still. And Layla Ellis, head housekeeper of the Park Estate, who had been managing the floor from the doorway to the butler's pantry, was on her knees beside the consul general's wife before anyone had time to breathe. She did not send Marcus to do it. She knelt herself, in her navy uniform dress with the white piping, with a linen napkin in one hand and a small crystal bowl of soda water in the other. She looked up at the consul general's wife, and she spoke in a voice that Ji-hoon would spend the rest of his life trying to describe accurately and failing. "Ma'am, I am so sorry. This dress is beautiful, and we are going to get every last drop of that wine out of it before you leave this house tonight. Marcus, will you go to the pantry and bring me the white vinegar and the club soda, please? Thank you. Ma'am, may I?" And Park Ji-hoon, who had not smiled in 3 years, looked down at the woman kneeling 6 feet from his chair, and he smiled. Fully, openly. The way a man smiles when he is 12 years old and has just seen his first real fireworks. 59 other guests continued their conversations. His mother saw. Ariam saw. His sister Yuna, seated across the table, saw, and her fork paused halfway to her mouth. And Layla Ellis, looking up at the consul general's wife with soda water in one hand, did not see him at all. That was the beginning. Park Ji-hoon had been 11 years old when he first understood that his life was not entirely his own. His father, Park Woo-jin, had taken him to the Manhattan office on a Saturday in October and walked him through every floor. The lobby with the marble his grandfather had chosen. The conference room where deals were signed. The corner office where Woo-jin spent 16 hours a day. At the end of the walk, Wu Jin turned to his son in the elevator and said, in the specific, quiet way Ji-hoon would remember for the rest of his life, "This is what a man builds, so that his children do not have to worry about the world. Do you understand?" Ji-hoon had said yes. He had understood. He had spent every day of the next 21 years earning it. He had gone to Yale. He had earned his MBA at Wharton. He had returned to Park Holdings as vice president at 26, chief operating officer at 28, and when his father collapsed of a stroke at his desk on a Thursday morning in March of 2023, chief executive at 29. He had buried his father. He had run the business without a single missed deadline through the entire grief window. He had, in the process, become the son his mother had raised him to be. He had also stopped smiling. Sun Hee Park noticed by the 3rd month. By the 6th month, she began to fill his calendar with what she referred to as introductions and Ji-hoon referred to, privately, as a slow-motion negotiation. Daughters of family friends. Nieces of business partners. Women who had been prepared, since they were girls, to marry someone exactly like him. He had gone to every meeting. He had been polite. He had felt nothing. Then, 6 months ago, his mother introduced him to Choi Ariam, and something in his mother's certainty had shifted from optimism to strategy. This was the one. This was the family that mattered. The choice controlled a shipping lane in the Yellow Sea that connected to interests Sun Hee Park was not going to describe to her son in detail and did not need to. Ji-hoon had understood the shape of the arrangement before his mother finished the sentence. He had said, all right. He had proposed in Seoul in April. Ariam had accepted with a small, careful smile that he had, in retrospect, admired. She had known what this was. So had he. The engagement had been announced in June. The wedding was scheduled for October. His younger sister Yuna, 27, a fashion buyer at Bergdorf Goodman, the only person in the family who still argued with their mother, had come to his apartment the night before the engagement dinner and said to him, without preamble, "Appa, you are going to marry this woman. Yes, you are going to marry her, and you are going to run the business, and you are going to have children, and you are going to be dead inside for the next 50 years. Yuna, I am telling you the truth." He had looked at his sister for a long moment. He had not disagreed. He had said, "I do not know how to do it any other way." Yuna had put her hand on his forearm. Her palm was warm. Her ring, the one their father had given her on her 16th birthday, the one she never took off, had glinted in the lamplight. Then, "Appa," she had said, "you had better hope that something wakes you up before October." He had not answered her. He had not, in his defense, believed anything was going to wake him up. Then a young server named Marcus dropped a full glass of Merlot onto the white silk cocktail dress of the wife of the Consul General of the Republic of Korea, and Layla Ellis knelt 6 feet from his chair. And something in Ji-hoon's chest, something that had been quietly closed since his father's funeral 3 years earlier, cracked open. His mother saw it. She smiled, without changing anything about her face, and continued speaking to the Deputy Consul General. She had recognized what she was seeing. She had, in fact, seen it before. She had, in fact, felt it herself. But that was a story for a different night. Right now, she was going to end it before it began. Layla Ellis had grown up in a boarding house on Bull Street in downtown Charleston, South Carolina, that her great-grandmother Josephine Ellis had bought in 1949 with money she had saved for 18 years cleaning houses on Laguerre Street. Josephine had left the house to her daughter, Layla's grandmother, Ruth Ellis, in 1972. Ruth had run it for 53 years. 6 rooms. A wide front porch with 2 rocking chairs and a ceiling fan that had not stopped turning since 1961. A garden in the back with hydrangeas and a fig tree Josephine had planted the year the house was bought. Breakfast served at 7:30. Sweet tea in a cut-glass pitcher in the front parlor from noon until sunset. The Ellis house was not the fanciest boarding house in Charleston. It was, according to the guests who returned to it year after year, the warmest one. Ruth was 78 now. Her knees hurt. Her heart had been called tired at her last checkup, which was the closest her doctor was going to come to telling her to slow down, and Ruth had heard him anyway. In the spring, she had told Layla, Over the phone, in the specific way Ruth said hard things, softly, without fuss, without pity, that she was going to have to sell the house by the end of the year. She could not run it alone anymore. She could not afford to hire help. And the property taxes on Bull Street in 2026 were what they were. Layla had listened. She had said, "How much?" Ruth had told her, $260,000 for the mortgage payoff. Another 80 for the roof, the plumbing, the sagging back porch, the fig tree that had grown into the fence and needed a specialist to move without killing it. $340,000, all in. Layla had said, "I will find the money." Ruth had said, "Baby, you are 28. You have your whole life." Layla had said, "This is my life." She had been a hospitality manager at the Wentworth Mansion in Charleston for 4 years before that. Before that, culinary school. A year at a boutique inn in Savannah. 3 years at a private household on Kiowa Island. She was good at her work. She was very good. What she did not have, at 28, was $340,000. 2 weeks after her grandmother's phone call, a private wealth placement agency in Manhattan had contacted her about a head housekeeper position at a family estate in Oyster Bay, Long Island. Live-in, 22-month contract. Compensation package that would clear $400,000 after taxes if she stayed the full term. A non-disclosure agreement of unusual specificity. She had flown up for the interview. She had met Mrs. Sunny Park in a study lined with books in 3 languages and a portrait of a man she assumed was Mrs. Park's late husband. Mrs. Park had asked her 7 questions. Layla had answered all of them honestly. Mrs. Park had offered her the position in the same conversation, and she had said, without smiling, "You will find that in this house we value discretion above almost every other virtue." Do you understand what I mean? Layla had said, "Yes, ma'am, I do." Mrs. Park had studied her for a long moment. She had said, "I believe you do." That was 18 months ago. In 4 more months, Layla Ellis would have every dollar she needed to walk into a lawyer's office in Charleston and take her grandmother's house off the market forever. She had counted the days. She had run the estate, supervised a staff of 6, coordinated with 3 private chefs, and never once, not for 1 hour of 18 months, allowed herself to become curious about the family whose name she cleaned in silver. She had not, until the night of the engagement dinner, ever exchanged more than 4 consecutive words with the man of the house. Then a young server dropped a wine glass, and she looked up, and she did not see him look at her. The dinner ended at 11:42. Layla supervised the removal of every glass, every plate, every napkin, every centerpiece. She personally escorted the consul general's wife to the powder room off the main hall with the club soda and the linen, and by 12:15 the silk dress had, in fact, been saved. The wife squeezed her hand at the door. She said in careful English, "You are a good woman." Layla said, "Thank you, ma'am." She watched the black car pull down the drive. She went back to the kitchen. She finished her shift at 1:40 in the morning. She walked to her room in the staff wing. And she did not think about the man at the head of the table at all. That was what she told herself. Meanwhile, in the study on the 2nd floor, Sunny Park was speaking to her son. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. "Do not," she said. "For 1 second, pretend you did not do it in front of me." Jihoon stood by the window with his hands in his pockets. The house was quiet now. The catering vans were gone. Ariam had gone to bed at 11, pleading the flight from Seoul, which they had both known was a courtesy. The estate on the hill outside the window was black and full of insects. You looked at that woman like she was water and you were dying." She was on her knees. "So, she was doing her job." "You have not smiled since your father's funeral," Sunny said. "Not for me, not for your sister, not for your fiancé. And in the middle of your engagement dinner, in front of the consul general and the Choi family and every person in this city whose opinion matters, you smiled at the housekeeper." Jihoon did not answer. Sunhee poured herself a glass of water. She drank half of it. She set it down. "You will not go near her again." Jihoon turned from the window. He looked at his mother for a long moment. "No." Sunny stopped. It was the first time in 3 years, perhaps in 7 years, perhaps in his entire adult life, that her son had said no to her about anything. I beg your pardon. I said no, Amma. Ji-hoon. I will not fire her. I will not avoid her. I will not pretend nothing happened tonight. Nothing did happen. Something happened, he said. You saw it. I saw it. Yuna saw it. Ariam saw it. The wife of the consul general saw it. And Layla Ellis is the only person in this house who does not know it happened, and I am not going to pretend it did not happen. His mother's face did not change. Her voice went quieter. Do you know what you are proposing? I am not proposing anything. You are proposing to destroy your engagement, your alliance with the choice, your standing in this family, and the arrangements your father put in place before he died. For a woman you have not spoken to. I am not proposing any of that. Then what are you proposing? He looked at her. I am proposing to be awake. For the first time since Appa died. He left the study. He went down the wide staircase and through the empty dining room where his mother's guests had eaten $30,000 of food 6 hours earlier. And he walked out through the French doors onto the terrace where the string quartet had played. And he stood on the grass in his engagement suit at 1:53 in the morning and looked up at the sky over Long Island and understood, without deciding to, that his life had just cracked cleanly in half. He did not know that at the same moment, on the far side of the estate, Choi Ariam was sitting on the edge of her bed in the guest wing, writing a letter in careful Korean to her father in Seoul, in which she explained, with unusual clarity for a woman of her age and station, that she was going to be releasing Park Ji-hoon from the engagement at breakfast, and that she was going to be doing it before either of their mothers could stop her. She had recognized what she had seen at the dinner table. She had, in fact, been waiting all evening to see whether her fiancé was capable of it. She was, in her own quiet way, relieved. Ji-hoon did not sleep. He sat on the terrace until 3:30. Then he walked back into the house through the kitchen door on the east side. The estate had 2 kitchens, the formal kitchen where the private chef prepared meals, and the smaller working kitchen where the staff ate and where the coffee was made every morning at 5. He had grown up walking through this second kitchen barefoot as a child. He had not been in it in 11 years. He sat at the wooden table in the corner and waited. At 5:02, Layla Ellis walked in. She was wearing jeans and a loose gray sweatshirt, and her hair pulled back in a soft twist. She was not yet in her uniform. She was carrying a small notebook and a pen. She stopped in the doorway when she saw him. Mr. Park. Ji-hoon, please. She said nothing. May I have a cup of coffee? She looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. She moved to the counter and turned on the electric kettle and pulled the coffee canister from the shelf without speaking. She made him a cup of coffee the way she made her own. French press, 3-minute steep, no sugar, splash of milk from the small pitcher in the door of the fridge. She set it in front of him. She did not sit. Thank you. You should be in bed. I should be a lot of things. She almost smiled. He saw it, the corner of her mouth moving 1/4 of an inch and then correcting itself, which was, he was going to learn over the next several months. The specific way Layla Ellis handled everything she was not sure she wanted to give away. I owe you an apology. She looked at him. I made you visible at that dinner tonight, in front of my family, my mother, and 60 guests. And you did not choose that, and you did not want that, and I did it anyway. I am sorry. Sir. Ji-hoon. Ji-hoon. She stopped. She set her notebook on the counter. Why? Why what? Why did you smile? He was quiet for a long time. Because you knelt down. She waited. You did not send the server, he said. You did not make him do it in front of the guests. You knelt yourself. You spoke to her. You asked her permission. You asked him for the vinegar. You saved her dress. You did the whole thing in, I do not know, a minute. And you did it without making anyone feel small. And I looked at you, and I remembered that people do that. That people are like that. And I have been sitting at that table for 4 hours pretending my life is the only kind of life there is. And you knelt down, and I remembered that it is not. She looked at him. That is a lot to put on a spilled glass of wine. I know. I have been working in this house for 18 months. I know. You did not know my name until tonight. I know that too. She was quiet. Layla, I am not going to make this your problem. I am not going to become a nuisance. I am not going to make it hard for you to do your job. I just wanted to say thank you for what you did tonight, and for the coffee, and to tell you that I saw what you did, and I will not forget it." She looked at the coffee cup in her hand. She looked at him. "You are welcome, Ji-hoon." He drank the coffee. He stood. "Have a good morning." He walked out of the kitchen. Layla Ellis stood at the counter with her notebook in her hand for a very long time. Then she made herself a cup of coffee. She sat down at the wooden table where he had been sitting. She did not open the notebook. She sat, and she thought about the specific way a Korean man in a wrinkled engagement suit had said the word coffee like it was the only thing in the world he was sure of, and she understood, without wanting to, that she was in trouble. He began to show up. Not to bother her. Not to press her. He was, from the first morning, the exact opposite of every rich man Layla had ever avoided in her life. He never touched her. He never made her feel watched. He never expected anything. He simply began to appear. The kitchen at 5:15 on Tuesday. He drank his coffee at the wooden table and read the Financial Times on his phone and did not speak unless she spoke first. The garden at 11 on Wednesday, when Layla was cutting hydrangeas for the front hall arrangement. He did not offer to help. He simply sat on the low stone wall with a book of Korean poetry his father had given him at 14, and he read. The library on Thursday afternoon, where Layla was supervising the deep clean of the antique rugs. He came in with a document he needed to sign, signed it in 3 seconds, and stayed for 40 minutes reading beside the window while the cleaning crew rolled the rugs. By the second week, Layla understood what he was doing. He was making himself available. He was not asking anything. He was simply, in the specific way of a man who had spent 3 years being invisible in his own house, giving her the option to speak to him. On the 9th day, in the working kitchen at 5:15 in the morning, she took the option. "How is your mother?" He looked up from his phone. "She is not speaking to me." "How long has it been?" 9 days. That is a long silence for a mother. My mother is very good at silence. She almost smiled. The engagement is off. She stopped moving. Ariam released me the morning after the dinner. It was not because of you. It was because she saw what I did, and she recognized that I was not going to be the husband she needed. She was very kind about it. She flew back to Seoul on Sunday. My mother has been managing the fallout for 9 days. I am sorry. Don't be. She was doing me a favor. She was doing herself one too. Layla looked at him for a long moment. "Mr. Park. Ji-hoon. Ji-hoon. I need you to understand something." He waited. "I am not what happens next. Whatever you are doing here, whatever this is, I am not the reason you get to be awake. I am a person doing my job. In 4 months, I am going home to Charleston, and I am going to run my grandmother's boarding house, and I am going to be a woman with a life. And whatever happened at the dinner, whatever cracked open in you when I knelt down, that was not about me. That was about you. Do you understand what I am saying?" "Yes." "Do you?" "I do. I am not asking you to be the reason. I am telling you that you were the moment. And I am telling you that I would like, if you are willing, to have a conversation with you sometimes. Not because I want anything from you. Because I have not had a real conversation with a person in 3 years. And you are, if I may say so, unusually easy to have one with." Layla looked at him. "That is a very careful way to ask a woman to be your friend. I am, if you have not noticed, a very careful man." She laughed. It came out of her before she could stop it. It was the first time she had laughed in the estate, actually laughed, since she had arrived 18 months earlier. He heard it. His entire face did the same thing it had done in the dining room. She saw it. This time, she understood what she was seeing. "Ji-hoon. Yes. This is going to be complicated. I know. Your mother is going to hate me. She does not know you yet. Ji-hoon. I am telling you. She does not know you yet." Layla Ellis, at 5:37 in the morning, in a working kitchen on Long Island, poured herself another cup of coffee and sat down across from Park Ji-hoon at the wooden table where the staff ate, and she began to have the conversation that was going to reroute the rest of her life. They talked for 6 weeks. He learned the shape of her life. Josephine's boarding house. Ruth's tired heart. The $340,000. The 4 months. He learned about her culinary school year and the boutique inn in Savannah and the fig tree in the back garden that her great-grandmother had planted the year the house was bought. He learned that Layla Ellis had never once in her 28 years of life asked another person for money and did not intend to start. She learned the shape of his father's stroke, his mother's expectations, his sister Una, the specific weight of being the son who was supposed to build the empire, his engagement to Ariam, his inability, for 3 years, to feel anything at all. They did not touch. He did not ask. She did not offer. They sat in the working kitchen at 5:15 in the morning. They walked in the garden at 11. They had a real conversation about a book he was reading in the library at 3. And they built, without saying it out loud, the specific kind of thing that two people build when both of them have spent their entire adult lives protecting themselves, and both of them, for reasons neither of them fully understood, had decided to stop. Then, on a Tuesday in the 6th week, at 9 in the morning, Sunhee Park called her son into the study. Una was there. His mother was standing at the window with her back to the room. She did not turn when he entered. "Sit down." He sat. She turned. "You have been meeting with the housekeeper for 6 weeks. I have been having conversations with Layla Ellis for 6 weeks. In this house. In this house. Every morning at 5:15. Yes. You believe I did not know. I believed you knew." His mother did not smile. "You will end it. Today. You will inform Miss Ellis that her contract is being paid out in full through the 22-month term, and that she is free to leave the estate this afternoon. She will have every dollar she needs. She will go home to Charleston, and you will go on with your life." Ji-hoon did not move. Una, from the corner of the room, said, "You will do this today, Ji-hoon. Or what?" His mother looked at him. "Or I will invoke the clause." The room went very still. The clause was a provision in Park Woo-jin's will. Ji-hoon had read it 3 years ago. It stated that if the sitting CEO of Park Holdings was determined by the surviving spouse and the board of trustees to be exercising unsound judgment in a manner that endangered the corporation, control of the family holdings could be transferred to a trustee arrangement until a suitable successor could be identified. His mother had never mentioned it. She had never needed to. Ji-hoon looked at her for a long time. "You would take the company from me. I would take it from the version of you that is going to destroy it. For a housekeeper. For a decision I watched destroy someone else." Una, from the corner, said quietly, Stop." His mother did not turn. "Stop, Una. I found the letters." The room went absolutely silent. Sunhee Park did not move. She did not blink. For a very long moment, she did not appear to be breathing. Then she said, very slowly, "What letters?" Una said, "The ones in the cedar box in the storage room off the 3rd floor. The ones you kept for 34 years. The ones from Elias Coleman." Sunhee closed her eyes. Ji-hoon looked from his mother to his sister and back to his mother. "Who is Elias Coleman?" Una said, "He was Umma's boyfriend at Columbia in 1990. He was a graduate student in architecture. He was black. Halabiaji found out. He gave Umma 1 week to end it, or he would disinherit her entirely. She ended it. Elias moved back to Chicago. Umma married Appa 14 months later." Sunhee said, still with her eyes closed. "Una, I am sorry, Umma, but if you are going to do this to Ji-hoon, we have to talk about it." Ji-hoon looked at his mother. He had never seen her cry. He had also, he realized, never seen her look small. She was doing both, now, standing at the window in her own study at 9:14 on a Tuesday morning. She did not answer him. She was 34 years and 11 months into a silence she had built to survive the choice her father had made her make, and her daughter had just walked into it, and her son had just seen it, and the wall was not going to hold. They sat down, all 3 of them. Sunhee Park, 58 years old, chairwoman of the Park Family Trust, sat on the leather couch in her own study and told her children about the year 1990. She had been 22. She had been in her 2nd year of a master's program in art history at Columbia. Elias Coleman had been 24, a graduate student in the Columbia School of Architecture. Born in Chicago, raised by his mother, a high school music teacher who had put him through undergrad at Morehouse and then Columbia on her own. He had been, in Sunny's own quiet words to her adult children 34 years later, the most alive person she had ever met. They had met at a lecture on Le Corbusier. They had spent 41 weekends walking through Manhattan. Her father had found out through a family friend in April of 1991. He had come to her apartment on West 116th Street with her uncle and her mother and told her, without raising his voice, that if she was still speaking to Elias Coleman on the following Monday morning, he would cut her off entirely. No tuition, no apartment, no family, no name. He had reminded her that she had a younger sister in Seoul who was 14 years old and needed her older sister's example. He had told her that he loved her, and that he was doing this because he loved her, and that she would understand when she was older. Son, he had asked for the weekend to think. Her father had given her the weekend. She had spent it in her apartment. Elias had come over on Saturday night. She had told him. He had listened without interrupting. He had said, at the end, only one thing. You have to choose the life you can survive. She had asked him what he would do if she chose him. He had said, I would build you the most beautiful house in the world. She had asked him what he would do if she chose her family. He had said, I would go back to Chicago. I would build houses. I would think about you every day for the rest of my life. She had asked him if he was angry. He had said, Sonny, if I loved you less, I would fight for you. But I love you enough to know that a life in which you had to fight your own father for me is not a life I can build for you. Choose the one you can survive. She had chosen the one she could survive. She had married Park Woo-jin 14 months later. He had been a good man. She had learned to love him. They had built Park Holdings together. They had had 2 children. She had been, by every visible measure, one of the most successful Korean-American women of her generation. She had also, for 34 years and 11 months, kept a cedar box in a storage room off the 3rd floor of the Oyster Bay house that contained 41 letters from a man named Elias Coleman, all of them written between September of 1990 and April of 1991, and one final letter from him written in June of 1991, 3 weeks after she had chosen her father, in which he wrote only, I hope you have a life you can survive. I will always be grateful I got to know you. She had never opened that final letter after the first time she read it. She had kept it. She had, in the language of grief, been keeping it for 34 years. Son, he finished the story at 10:08 in the morning. The study was very quiet. Yuna was crying. Ji-hoon had not moved. He said, finally, yes. You did not choose the life you could survive. You chose the life Halabiaji could survive. She looked at her son. She did not answer. I am not going to make the same choice. Ji-hoon, I love you. I love this family. I love this business. And I am not going to fire Layla Ellis. I am not going to end this. I am not going to spend the next 34 years keeping a cedar box in a storage room. If you want to invoke the clause, invoke it. Take the company. I will find another way to build a life. Sun Hee Park looked at her only son. She looked at her daughter. She looked at the study where her husband had sat every evening of their marriage. She said, very quietly, I will not invoke the clause. Ji-hoon closed his eyes. But I need time. Take it. Do you understand what I am giving you? Yes, Do not waste it. I will not. He stood. He walked to the window where his mother had been standing. He looked out at the estate his family had bought in 1978. Thank you. He went to Charleston. He did not tell Layla he was going. He flew commercial. He landed at 3:50 on a Friday afternoon in October. He took a taxi to Bull Street. He stood on the sidewalk in front of a 2-story house with peeling white paint and a wide front porch with 2 rocking chairs and a ceiling fan and a hand-carved sign that read the Ellis House. EST 1949, and he stood there for 4 minutes without moving. Then he walked up the front steps and rang the bell. Ruth Ellis, 78 years old, wearing a house dress and a pair of reading glasses on a chain around her neck, answered the door. She looked at Ji-hoon. You must be Layla's Ji-hoon. Ma'am, come in. She told me not to expect you. I did not tell her I was coming. I know. She said if you had any sense you would surprise her. She held the door open. He went in. The house smelled like cinnamon and old wood and coffee. There was a woven rug in the foyer. There was a portrait of a woman in a blue dress above the mantel that Ji-hoon understood, without being told, to be Josephine. There was sweet tea in a cut-glass pitcher on a side table in the front parlor. There was a rocking chair by the window with a book on the seat and a pair of knitting needles beside it. "Sit down," Ruth said. "I have been waiting for this conversation for 3 months." Ji-hoon sat. Ruth sat across from him in the other rocking chair. She looked at him. "I am going to save us both some time, young man. My granddaughter has told me everything about you. I know about your mother. I know about the engagement. I know about the woman at Columbia in 1990. I know about the coffee in the kitchen at 5:15. I know about the fig tree, because Layla described it to you and you remembered it, and Layla does not describe the fig tree to men who are going to forget it. So, I'm going to ask you one question, and you are going to answer it honestly, because if you do not, I will know, and you will not like what happens." "Yes, ma'am." "What are you doing here?" "Ma'am, I bought the house." Ruth stopped. She looked at him. "Which house?" "This house. The Ellis house. I bought it this morning. The mortgage is paid off. The property taxes are covered for 10 years. The roof, the plumbing, the porch, the fig tree. I have a contractor coming from Charleston Preservation on Monday to give you an estimate for whatever your granddaughter wants done. And the title," he paused, "the title is in Layla Ellis's name. Not mine. Yours to her. Not mine to her. She did not ask me for it. She does not know I did it. I did it because it is the right thing to do, and because it is the only thing in the world I know how to do that will not make her feel like she owes me anything." Ruth said quietly, "Young man." "Ma'am, you bought my great-grandmother's house." "Yes, ma'am." "In her name." "Yes, ma'am." "Without asking her." "Yes, ma'am." "Do you understand that if she does not want to see you again after this, you have just given her the exact means to never have to?" "Yes, ma'am. I do." She looked at him for a very long time. "Do you love her?" "Yes, ma'am." "Have you told her that?" "No, ma'am. I have not." "Why not?" "Because she has not decided whether she wants to be loved by me yet, and I did not want her to feel she had to answer before she was ready." Ruth Ellis, 78 years old, sat in her great-grandmother's rocking chair in the front parlor of a house on Bull Street in Charleston, South Carolina, and looked at Park Ji-hoon for what felt to him like a very long time. Then she stood up. She walked to the side table. She poured him a glass of sweet tea. She brought it to him. "Son, you are going to sit here and drink that. And then you are going to get on the next flight back to New York. And you are going to wait until my granddaughter comes home in 4 months, the way she planned to, with her own money that she earned herself. And when she comes home, and this house is hers, and she has the whole rest of her life to decide what to do with it, then, and only then are you going to tell her that you love her. Do you understand what I am telling you?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good." She sat back down. He drank the sweet tea. It was the best thing he had ever tasted. For months later, in February of the following year, Layla Ellis's 22-month contract at the Park Estate ended. She flew home to Charleston on a Sunday morning. Ruth picked her up at the airport in the same 2003 Chevy she had driven for 23 years. She did not tell her granddaughter anything on the drive home. She simply drove. They pulled up in front of Bull Street. There was a new sign on the porch. The wood was fresh. The paint was cream. The hand-carved letters read The Ellis House, EST 1949, restored 2027, owner, L. Ellis. Layla got out of the truck. She stood on the sidewalk. She looked at the house. She looked at her grandmother. Ruth said, "Baby, there is a young man on the porch." Layla turned. Park Ji-hoon was sitting in one of the rocking chairs. He was in jeans and a linen shirt. He was holding a glass of sweet tea. He looked, for the first time in 3 years, like a man who had slept. He stood up. He came down the porch steps. He stopped at the bottom. "I have been waiting 4 months to say this to you." "Say it." "The house is yours. Your grandmother is going to explain the paperwork. It is in your name. It has been in your name since October. Whatever you decide about me, you have this. Your dream is safe. You built it. You bought it. Your grandmother and I signed the papers together. I want you to know that first." Layla did not move. "And the second thing, Layla Ellis, I have been in love with you since the 9th day, and I have not been able to say it, because I did not want you to feel that you owed me anything. You do not. You never will. Whatever happens next, you got here on your own. You saved for 18 months in a house you did not choose. You did the work. I did not do this for you. I did it because it is right. And I am telling you now, with the house in your name and your grandmother inside and every option in the world open to you, that I love you, and I would like, if you are willing, to spend the rest of my life finding out what we can build together. Layla Ellis stood on the sidewalk in front of her great-grandmother's house on Bull Street in Charleston, South Carolina, and she looked at the Korean man who had smiled at her across a dining room in Oyster Bay 141 days earlier, and she started to cry. Ji-hoon. Yes. Get up here. He walked up the steps. She met him at the top. She put her hand on his cheek. You are a very careful man, Park Ji-hoon. I know. I love you too. They were married 3 months later in the garden behind the Ellis house, under the fig tree Josephine Ellis had planted in 1949. Ruth walked her granddaughter down the aisle in a blue dress. Yuna flew down from New York with Sun-hee. Camille, Layla's best friend from culinary school, cried the entire ceremony. Choi Ariam sent a hand-lettered card from Seoul that Layla kept in a frame in the front parlor for the rest of her life. Sun-hee Park stood in the second row. She wore a pale green silk dress that had belonged to her own mother. When the ceremony ended, and Ji-hoon and Layla walked back down the aisle together, Sun-hee reached for her son's hand as he passed. Ji-hoon. He stopped. Elias sent a letter last week. He is teaching architecture at the University of Chicago. He never married. He said he saw my daughter's wedding announcement in the Times, and he wanted to say congratulations. Are you going to write him back? He looked at her son. I already did. The Ellis house expanded to 12 rooms by the following summer. Layla ran it with a small staff. Ji-hoon flew down every weekend and worked remotely from the small study Ruth had let him build in the back of the house. They had a daughter 3 years later. They named her Ruth Josephine Park. Sun-hee Park flew to Chicago in the spring of 2028 to have coffee with Elias Coleman. She was 60 years old. He was 62. They talked for 4 hours. They agreed to talk again. But that, as they say, is another story. This one ends here, on a porch on Bull Street, with a man who chose to be awake, a woman who chose to trust him, and a house that had been standing for 78 years and was finally, at last, home. If this story reached you, hit the like button and subscribe, because we have more stories coming that are going to break you open in the best possible way. Drop a comment. Was it the coffee at 5:15, or the cedar box, or the sweet tea on the porch that got you first? And tell me, should the next story be Eunice, because she is going to meet someone at Fashion Week in Milan that she is going to try very hard not to fall in love with? Or should we go to Chicago and find out what happens when Sun-hee Park has coffee with Elias Coleman for the second time? You decide. I'll be here.